Hi.
Hello.
Hello, everybody, and welcome, Jonathan Priest.
Thanks for having me.
Jonathan, um, joining us from North Carolina. Us, I mean me. Us, as in you and me. I'm in Wales, UK. Um, and so today it's the second episode of this podcast. Woo! It's turned into a series. Awesome. And Jonathan and I have been conjuring up a talk on the theme of the currency of spaciousness. So we may differ from that topic, but that's going to be our jumping off point. Um, Jonathan and I have collaborated in the past. We've been in a band together. Jonathan plays the drums like a badass drummer. And we made a double album when I lived in the States and did a number of performances at ecstatic dances and various different kinds of performance events. Um, so, yeah, absolute pleasure to be here today together to, dive into the creative zone and have a discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so is there anything you'd like to start off with, Jonathan, around this topic of spaciousness in relation to either in relation to like being a creative artist or just in general in relation to life as a day-to-day experience?
Well, I work as a acupuncturist and work with many people who come in seeking balance and harmony in their life, and it seems to be a recurring theme that people really crave and desire less busyness, less hurriness, sort of a respite from the tyranny of the mind. And it's been something that I've explored intensely this last several months, where the value of, or when we value space and not filling the schedule with activities, it's like compressing a spring, loading a spring, and all the potential energy is available for when we do have expression, or we perform our art, or we have to do intense activity. The less we dissipate our energy, and to really feel what capacity is available to us, it's in this realm of spaciousness. And the times we live in, it's not valued. Doesn't seem to be valued. And from what I've observed and from what I've experimented with in my own life, there's tremendous value. Those times where we can load the spring, potential energy, into the kinetic energy.
Yeah, I do feel a similar thing like what you're saying about the sense that or there's at least some kind of narrative out there that can be saying at times, busy is best, or that, I've actually thought about that in relation to self-worth and um, self-validation. There can be a connection with I'm really busy, I'm really important, and so I'm worthy and I'm important in the community. And however, sometimes that's not actually making us happy. And so there's that thread to it. There's an even like different thread, you know, if you look at the way the system itself has been organized. It all seems to be sort of fluttering it away now. I mean, fluttering is quite a kind word to use, but maybe crumbling and rearranging, and a lot of things changing. But that you could say there has even been a thing where, you know, people have been slightly kept on an edge of their capacity. Because if we have spaciousness, we tend to be more centered. And once I find if I get to a period where I don't have enough spaciousness and I recognize it and then I bring something in, we'll talk about that in a bit, maybe like little ways to create space if you need to. But first thing is I get back to zero, you know, I get to regulate and feel like, okay, I feel centered again, recover. And after that comes, oh, I'm inspired. Now I want to go and like create something, give a bit more. Whereas if you're always slightly under where you need to be, you can feel like you're just constantly paddling and never quite getting to the shore of rest as well. So yeah, I think this is relevant to everyone potentially, no matter if you're an artist or a parent or which, you know, the life being a creative act, like whether you've got a full-time job or no job or like whatever the circumstances are, how do we all create space to enjoy our time?
Yeah, and why do we want space? If you haven't tasted it and you don't get to visit a spacious place, it doesn't seem like there's a point to it. But those inspirations and those ideas that I would say, like the great masterworks, the great records, the great pieces of art, come from that deep place. And having space to hear and to observe, like the idea of synchronicities, you know, I think it's simply because we're in alignment to where there's space to notice small details and the timings of things. So I think giving people a taste of what spaciousness feels like and the opposite of spaciousness, which in modern life we find ourselves inhabiting frenetic, I don't know the best word for it, but hurried, frenetic, shallow. It's like the ocean with turbulence at the top. But those moments where we can visit the depths, whether it's in performance or whether it's in personal practices that take us there, the more I would suggest that the more space is available, the more we notice things, we get information we need, and we get the cues, like what's the next right step for me or for this situation in a space, in a spacious place. Those things really stand out and take on a different quality than that hurried, when you're pressed into action, you got to make things happen. It's more of an effortless way.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a fear for some of us around touching the void of the unknown, which often awaits before you get into the inspiration? You know, if you do create space in your life, sometimes you are confronted with a lot of the things that are waiting to be felt. So there are multiple reasons why we might not create that space. Either we can't, like practically, for whatever reason we think we can't, or we can't. I don't know. There might be many different. Everyone's got a different set of circumstances. But then, if we could, do we avoid that because oh, that's like, I'm going to feel the void. And actually, like you say, lots of great stuff comes from the void, but in my own experience, I've got to go through it and go, ah, what's going on? Nothing. Who have I become? What have I built? Like, it all falls away every time you do that, which is very healthy, but it's not necessarily that I'm accumulating, got, I passed my exams and then I'm the best at this and then I got this job and now, I mean, there is accumulation, but to let it all fall away on the regular and then go, okay, like, let's refresh, let's kind of do a new thing now, whether it's in the same direction I have been working towards or a completely different one. I find it's very good. I've actually flexed the muscle a bit to let it all go and get to be a mess on the floor and then pick it up again in the right way that feels relevant at that moment.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're drawn to like improvisational music, expression, improvisational dance. It's like you just, you've put in the work and then go to that unknown place and just let, I don't know, let the light of inspiration take over. And when we can get out of the way and create space, if we come in with so much and it's like, yeah, when I play this song, I'm gonna do these exact things. When I go and dance, I got to figure out all the choreography, all the steps. It's like getting pushed. And oftentimes we don't willingly enter into the void, but we have others that kind of poke you. You're really good at that. Right?
Poke you into the void.
Wait. Yeah, go. Dive in. And then you start getting validation. But if you never cross that void because you're not ready or all the circumstances aren't right, don't get a chance to get new fresh things coming in. So yeah, but and we've got so many distractions that we easily plop down, watch a series, and oh, I got to watch the next episode. I got to pick up the phone. There's an avoidance, I think, of like feeling stillness. It's not easy. Still, and what comes up and all the mind stuff that comes in. But with spaciousness, that can exist and emotions can come up. But it's that feeling of, I'm bigger than this. And it can operate. And just like the turbulent waves on the surface, I can remain still until it passes. But it's a practice. But yeah, it is a scary place.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked about playing music with you when we were in our band, us, um, it was me and you and another musician, Isabel Fontaine. And we would often, as a trio, we did a lot of improvising, and we would often come to these still pauses between one musical idea finishing and the next beginning. And they were almost like the best bits, because that would be this like rich moment of something potentiating or something integrating that just happened. And in a way, no one has a big like, this has to happen right now. It's just like very relaxing, like that sense of time when you're able to just go, oh, that just happened.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like really enjoy that. So maybe this thing that's happened in our culture has been like those little pauses. I've even noticed it with movies. You know, if you watch a movie made in 1950 or even 1970, you'll find the edit is a bit slower, like it might linger on that shot. Some action happens and it lingers for a couple of seconds, and you get to go, oh, cool, next scene. And this is less common in today's movies. Like it just cuts immediately to the next thing, next thing, next thing. So yeah, I guess one of the things that feels really powerful about what we can do as a collective is like choose what we want. So how do we want to relate to all of that? In terms of how do we all create space for ourselves and each other? Like if someone says, actually, I've just got a free week ahead of me, do we shame them, or do we go, oh wow, that's great? Or do we say, oh, it's all right for you? Little ways that we can empower each other to give ourselves that breathing room, because I think what can happen is that you might take a little bit more of a pause, but then the action that you then do might actually save you time, because you were tuning in, you know, you're feeling what feels right. So similarly in the music that we would do, it'd be like, oh, the pause, and then there's like an idea that comes from not a place of grasping, just a natural outpouring.
Yeah, and I think people need to taste what spaciousness, like to start to value it. I think there's a big gap in the day-to-day existence we find ourselves in society, and even watching YouTube videos where there's some best practice. That means you got to talk so fast and make your video shorter. How many things have I seen where they want to condense, they want to make everything fit, but it's comical almost to watch someone talk at that rate with no space, but it's valued as people don't have an attention span, so they want to be able to get all the information in a shorter video. I think there's going to be, and I think it's already starting to happen, but people can't really name it, but it's a dissatisfaction with this hurried existence. And when I've shared my situation of this year, I left a 30-year career, 9 to 5, doing computer programming, information technology. Just an opportunity to step off the treadmill and slow down. Slow down. I've got this idea for some e-commerce thing, gadgets and things, like everything's designed to save us time and fit more things in our day. And it ends up not achieving that. It robs the space. It fragments us further. So I have this idea, slow the F down products. Things that force you to do things but be present and engage. They're not going to save you time. But make it part of your day where less and less of these things that demand attention and that rapid pace and that lack of spaciousness. Let's intentionally start to adopt ways that are richer and deeper, but it requires slow. It's like the breath. People breathe shallow and quick, and their nervous system is jacked up. That's why ancient practices revolving around the breath. That's the way to moderate. But life circumstances, people's with families and a lot of activities, it's not as easy to create the space, but there's always opportunities to find ways to slow down, create space. And then when you can see what emerges in that space, it gives you fuel to seek more of it. So that's the currency of, you talked about the currency of space. But it's got to be valued, and I don't think people get to taste it enough to know that its value.
Yeah. Um, that would be interesting if you want to share any more about your journey of changing your day to day in terms of having had a job and the security. Because if I think about space too, there's different kinds of space. There's like a spaciousness that appears if you have plenty of cash, you know? It's like, oh, right, no trouble. That whole area is feels very free. And sometimes, in order to carve out this kind of life where we can get a balance of all things, so not just, okay, I've got money, but I'm totally stressed and I don't have any, I'm not doing what I like, or I'm doing what I like and I have money, but I've got no time for my relationships. You know, all the different ways we've got these actually quite fundamental compromises. Because I've been like, I was telling you just before we came on that I've been thinking of these 5 pillars, I've called it 5 pillars of like what really makes us feel quite content. And I think you could put it in 5 mini categories. One's like good relationships and good community and yeah, loving connection relationships, a good quality of life with nature and good food and water, that kind of thing. Then a financial flow in and out, like a financial ease, or like that area of life working. Your stable home space that feels solid and good. And then doing what you love. And if you think about those 5 things, actually, in order to get certain needs met, we often compromise one of those really fundamental aspects. Because when you have all those things, you don't give a shit about being a millionaire or being famous, or you just feel like, oh yeah, cool, I'm doing what I love, I've got my people, it's like, yeah, life's good. And so in order to like carve out that type of scenario, yeah, it almost takes a little bit of like, for me anyway, swinging to one place and tending to that for a while, and then maybe you quit the job and then you go, ah, money, okay, is it all right? It's kind of all right. You know, you're sort of like going around trying to weave, I call it like a tapestry, where everything can start to balance more, but it's not super simple in our world to do that. So if you wanted to share any more about that journey of, or anything else, but like that journey of coming out of a full-time employment, because that can often be referred to as a, and you know, I can't quit my job kind of thing, and you have done that.
Yeah, but I love this 5 pillars. The yeah, it's balance and harmony, and for each individual, you may want a little more security, and we're all different with our makeups, you know. But neglecting any one of them gives this feeling of disintegration and fragmentation. So to be at least aware of, are you filling the bucket? Are you nourishing this plant, the financial plant, but not giving undue attention to it? I mean, there's plenty of people now that have made a lot of money like trading cryptocurrency, but their whole day is consumed by looking at minute to minute action of what's happening with the price of Bitcoin. So they've solved the financial pillar, but you have to have some balance, or it's gonna the whole thing with the Eastern medicine and the holistic approach is all the pieces. If things get out of balance, or you depart from nature's ways, like doing things in season and times of the day, over time it creates disharmony. So I love this 5 pillars and just being aware of those, and then finding ways for our life situation and where we're at, but being intentional, have some intentionality about it. So intentionality versus mechanical. And the job situation, for me personally, I had a career that spanned over 30 years in information technology. At the time I started, that was the up and coming, and now we see it's just dominated everything. But I reached a point around this time last year, heading into winter, having time and space, less gig activity, less being out in the world, where I just had such, in spaciousness, such a clear signal that this wave has completed. It's time. And it was a long time coming. And I had the inner dialogue, how are you going to survive? How are you going to do these things? And I haven't figured all that out. But it was so clear to me that this misalignment, the time, and being aware and feeling into things, I could see that things were getting, on one hand, easier. Or I could just, show up and pass my day, and then I have the weekend, and I have a steady paycheck, and I can buy musical gear without thinking about it. I could go out to dinner. But there came a strong signal that, okay, all that, it's time. You're meant to be doing something else. This is a lot of daylight hours during the week, something that doesn't fill you. So I heard that voice. I wrote a resignation letter, and then my last day, the end of a 35-year career and stability, January of this current year. So that was a huge watershed moment, stepping into the void, but it wasn't an intellectual. It stopped being, because you could never figure it out. How can you make it work? How can you make it work? But I felt it so deeply, and now I've started a new life trajectory. While I was working in technology, I studied and completed a Chinese medicine program, knowing that that likely is going to be a part of my next chapter. So the first period, my last day of that long career, I gave myself 3 months of just being in spaciousness. And it was such a wonderful, invaluable experience that I realized in my life, maybe when I was 1 year old, 2 years old, before I had preschool and other things, I lived free like that. So I wanted to give myself a rebirth to really feel it deeply. And then this idea of spaciousness, which I've intentionally brought into my day-to-day life now, had I not had that break and jumped off the train, I would not have gotten to taste it and see the merits of it. So that's been the foundational thing. Personal practices that I do, it brings into my musical performances. And then also this idea of trusting, like inhabiting that void or walking into the unknown, but you know you're going into it integrated, in an integrated place. And then you see validation like, yeah, this works. Things are coming to me unsought. I don't have to put so much effort planning things and trying to put myself out there. A lot of opportunities have come to me, and I realize it's coming from a different place. So now I'm like really believing that this is the way. So to figure out the long-term financial security, I can't figure that out right now. I'm just sitting here, but continued with integration and walking down the road, I trust it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That was such a nice story to listen to. Real life story. Can you tell us what, just for example, what things are coming in? So is it your acupuncture work, which obviously fulfills you as a healer, and drumming? What can you give us those?
Yeah,
Uh,
so I'm an accompanist for modern dance classes at the local university. That's a regular thing. For the last 3 years, even when I worked at the university doing the technology, I started to, I was called on to be a accompanist with musical improvisation for dance classes. And that I'm a real believer in the principles with Qigong and Tai Chi, which has been a practice for me, but seeing them, getting to sit in a dance class and the students that are, on a modern campus, there's not a lot of embodiment opportunities. So of the student population, it's nice to see where a relatively embodied student is at. And it's constantly giving me information that I bring into the healing arts practice, but also I've started teaching Qigong at a local yoga center. So getting to teach that, teach a little drums. I have the acupuncture practice. I think my next phase of that is to also have the availability online to work with people.
yeah, it's like a nice tapestry of things that are fulfilling, and in that moment of starting, maybe, or it being in the beginnings of creating these um, streams of activity, it takes a bit of getting them going, but they can all build, and when we enjoy doing it, it feels like, oh yeah, this is a good direction. Because you asked me, and I wanted to say, like, this talking about spaciousness is not even necessarily always to do with activity or not activity. It's a kind of feeling as well, because we're not saying, oh, you shouldn't do things, and I think that's clear anyway. But you were asking me, like, what does it feel when you go into that mode of, like, when I get clear on a project deadline, making an album release on that date, gigs coming up, when you're coming from a place of spaciousness, or you're managing to somehow weave that in. Actually, what I've found, I too had a period of like very not much happening to really ground in that. I mean, I gave myself that gift. Um, and as the years have gone by since then, it's all started to build more. So there is actually a lot of activity in my day to day, but I do find like I'm able to sit with it all in a more spacious way. So I'm not getting stressed about a little thing that goes wrong, or it's more like rolling water rolling off the back feeling. And then what it means is when you go, you've got more capacity when you to do bigger things in a moment where, okay, it's there's an album launch, you've got to finish the mix and master, you've got to deal with the promo or coordinate the people doing that, and then you've got to prepare for the gig, and how you juggling with that practice of spaciousness or that attitude of it. There is, like you talked earlier about trust. I trust. There's more of an ability to yield into that when there's lots happening and there's pressure on you because you're the one standing up on stage, or you're the one teaching the class, or even whatever, taking care of the kids, or cooking for the family. Like, you're not so much in that like shallow top layer you spoke about of reactivity. Because I think that going through the void and that spaciousness enables you to integrate, the deeper things, release stuff. So you can be spacious during activities. And by becoming selective about what you want to do with your time, I also have like a job that's not an artistic thing to pay the rent, but the way I manage my boundaries around it is linked to spaciousness. What I say yes and no to, and when you kind of meet your own boundary and you register it, like, oh, I've had enough of this activity or this thing or this feeling, no more. Everyone feels that and they stop trying to put it all on you. It's like magic. It happens in an instant. And you're like, bingo, I don't have to keep pushing back now. And that for me has been a massive part of the journey. Like, sometimes holding space for quite a long time for something that's going to potentiate, but it hasn't come true yet. So no one knows what you're like. You're basically sitting on eggs. That's how it feels. No one can see it. And I had this on Saturday. I did a gig, and it was the first gig I did with the new person who's doing the backing for my music. And it's something I've been dreaming about, having someone on the electronic machines, and I'm just going to take up all the stage, parade around with my microphone in a costume, and just like do that role without having to do the machine. So that happened Saturday, and I realized, God, I've been holding space for that to happen for some time. I've been there going, and that's a sort of, not exactly guarding it, but just knowing it will come, and then it does, and you're like, great, that's, wheels have been set in motion. So it's like such a multi-layered thing. It's entirely practical, and it's also very energetic.
Yeah, but I think it's important to have you have the time where you're practicing, you're cultivating, you're conceiving of an idea, you're rehearsing it, and then if it never if you never have an opportunity to showcase what you worked out, I think it leads to like a depression or a
Yeah.
frustration. It's not nature's way to have done all that preparation. The roots are all nourished, and then the tree doesn't grow and flourish. So I think we have to, and sometimes, like for me, it's oftentimes someone else presents an opportunity, and my initial response is, ooh, I'm not ready to do that, to talk in public and to do this, or you prodded me to freestyle rap on a song. It's like if your mind sits there, if you've got the chance to sit about it, you'll find 100 reasons. No, not ready yet, not ready yet. So I think that's a good point about, you're holding a space, you're doing all the things to incubate those eggs, but then if it never gets a chance to be birthed, hatched out into the world, that builds up and creates a frustration and a depressed state. So it's not balanced. And I generally require an external agent to get me to get something moved, but I trust it because it's come time and time again. So that's a fine razor's edge to tread. Like how in tune with your own mind are you to know that I'm sabotaging the situation because I don't want to have this showcase where I'm out there and I know it could be better if I had more time. So, but you do it. It seems like it comes, you get the internal message and then you act on it. You set a deadline and you marshal all the forces because you have this date in your calendar. So for me, I'd like to cultivate that and have that more, but I see that, well, if I don't do it, someone else is time and time again, I'm given these opportunities to, okay, let's see what you got. And then it may require, like, okay, I've got to sacrifice some of the things that I've really valued with a total open ended schedule. Now I got to carve out time and really prepare for this. But it seems like you have that a really good internal motivation and discipline to stick to it. For me, it's usually someone else that gives me an opportunity, which I'm so thankful that opportunities come. But I have a reluctance to carve out my schedule too much and put dates in there. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I find that you help me chill out, Jonathan, so it's probably a good balance. um,
So for
yeah.
you, is it a different feeling? Have you sensed like that feeling where you feel sort of from that more shallow, turbulent place, like, man, it's time for me to go do this because I got to start getting my name out there. I got to start getting some opportunities. I got to go talk to these clubs or whatever. There's a time for that. But have you really developed a feeling like, okay, this project, it's time to start incubating and take something towards being birthed?
Yeah, I think that I've noticed that the main thing that makes a project happen or work is momentum. In some ways, that's all it needs, as long as there's like the basic skills in place. But it's not that much of a miracle when certain things work. And depending on what you're trying to do, and I've wondered, I think when I want to perform from quite a deep place, so it's taken all these years of performing and finding the ability to let that place be
Mm.
visible. So I couldn't force that before it's ready. You can do lots of different things, life experiences, projects. And so I have the sensation now every time I do a show, like I'm sharing something even more. And each time it's a bit more. Maybe the sound backing production goes up a notch, or the actual situation of the concert. Um, but there have been plenty of times where I've just sort of done what you said I did to you, like poke. I poke myself to do it. Like Saturday, I did do a big freestyle rap and it felt really edgy. I was like, oh, this is just gonna. I've always loved rapping and I don't think I've ever really properly done it on stage. And I didn't have. We started preparing properly. Like that idea to do a rap came in about 5 days before, and I was like, I'm not gonna learn it because that's not long enough. So I'll just have to freestyle. And I learned the first line and I was like, you're just going to do it, Brian. sure enough, the actual rap was all right, but the energy behind it was amazing. It was like, "Blah! I just need to like release this part of me," and the audience really felt that. So the whole show, in a way, was very imperfect, and we were ambitious with a lot of the things we were doing. But yeah, giving yourself that. In fact, that opportunity to play on Saturday was someone else asking me, "Do you want to do a gig at this event?" And it was one of those things you described. Someone asks you, and you're like, "Yeah, okay." That will be a pressure to get what we want to do together by then, but it will be just the right amount. And yeah, it was like a birth. It was quite messy, and lots of things did not go as planned, but in a way, it doesn't matter compared to the energy, like you say. And I really relate to the feeling of the depression that happens if you don't then, having cultivated the energy and given it that chance to grow roots, if you don't let it bloom and put it out in the world, you can get, I do experience that at times, like frustration and like a heaviness. And as soon as it's done that, then everything feels lighter, the whole body feels good. I mean, me and Teresa were talking about this last episode about the gauge on releasing your creative, getting past the blockage to release something. You immediately feel like, well, I do, better. Like, yeah, that feels good. So all these holding patterns and way we can say, "I'm not ready." Sometimes we're not, but often we won't be ready until we've actually done it. So it's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, there's a lot of paradoxes with things. This idea of spaciousness, but also I find giving myself like single, really deep focused things that I do throughout the day allows me to really feel the spaciousness. And even in those things, it's not like doing nothing is the way to spaciousness. It's pick one thing. If you want to practice an instrument, or you want to work on a certain dance, something that generates power from the ground up and expresses out through your limbs, you take one small thing. Sometimes if we've got a big program that, oh, I want to sign up for this, I want to get into this book and do all these methods. Sometimes I find going deep with small things and doing a lot of that lets you feel an integration, doing things from an integrated place and not this shallow, dispersed, busy, frenetic place. So I make intentional in my day, and I try to coordinate it with like the movement of the daylight and sun, and not look at clocks and not be led in any kind of mechanical way when possible. It's like, and that's creativity. You find a way to ride the day and experience a more richer way to do things. And that's art as well. It's not just creative output and performances. It's you feeling the difference coming from a busy, frenetic, shallow place, and then an integrated, deep place. So I try to intentionally make blocks of these activities. It's not always going to be the same time every day, and I'm not always going to do the same things, but I've got like these blocks, I call them, where it's a way to experience the integration, spaciousness, but it's also a way to keep at bay that tyranny of the mind. So you give yourself something and things that you want to do and you want to get better at, and allocate your attention and time and value it. Value it, make a ritual out of it, make it sacred. But filling more blocks intentionally where possible. And everyone's got different circumstances with family obligations and work, but there's still, I would venture to guess, places where this intentionality versus mechanical living.
Yeah, you can. I think that sometimes you can impose on the space you live in, whether it's alone or with other people, like an activity. It can be very immediate, like, let's just do this now for a minute. That's kind of how children operate, and they're pretty spacious. They haven't yet been, you know, piled with other things and layers. I'll just do this for a minute. I did a picture. Oh, doing something else now. Like it doesn't have to be sporadic and random, but it also can be, yeah, I'm just going to like bring this to the space and do this for a while. And actually, when you get in that creative act, it's amazing how other people want to get involved. They're like, oh, that looks fun. What are you doing? Are we going to watch TV or should we do some karaoke? um,
But
yeah,
sorry.
go for it.
No, like the idea of the child's mind, it's like they're not attached to outcomes. We
Yes,
learn to get all this expectation of like, okay, if I release a little reel on Instagram, I got to see the engagement, how many people are doing it, and it stops being fun. So
yeah,
these children that just their impulses spend a couple minutes, they want to draw, now they're doing something else, but they're not attached to like, what is this that I've done created? Is it going to be accepted? So I think returning to that is a nice exploration and learning from children that they're not attached, they're not grasping at something.
yeah. I thought that maybe we could just actually focus on that for a minute, like little ways of um, yeah, little ways of creating space or I mean, you've mentioned a few, like the way you focus on an activity, or I mean, maybe we're coming towards the end of our wave of discussion, but I thought just a few practical examples actually I had to share. Um, oh, that's what I wanted to say. The simple ideas, to maybe round off with. Like, one thing I have done at times is actually, before I go into that, I'll just say also the point of this whole like podcast series isn't really like, oh, this is how we should live. It's more kind of bobulating ideas, sharing from our experiences, from our creative places, and community, really being in community around all these things as we're all like navigating all these aspects of life together. So, yeah, one thing I've done before is turn off my phone for a certain amount of time, maybe a 24-hour period, and making people aware is good. Like, oh, I'm going to have alone time in my house. I won't be having any visitors for the next 2 days, or I'll have my phone off for the next day. Is there anything you need before I turn it off? Like things like that, where you can just kind of create an opportunity for spaciousness where you think you couldn't have it. Like imposing, again, like I say, you're imposing, I won't be available, because that's another thing of our times, is that you're supposed to be available the whole time to reply. Another thing I've done at times is found a way to have a mini travel. It could be far or it could just be really not that far. And there's ways of doing that. If you've got that type of freedom, if you haven't got the money for Airbnbs and like having holidays all the time, there's you can go stay at someone's house who's gone away or look after their cat. Ways to just change the day-to-day angle on things. Yeah, dates in the diary is also something we mentioned that helps to create spaciousness for a certain thing to happen. And then maybe the week before it, you say to everyone, I'm doing this week. And everyone says, okay. So yeah, like little ways of carving it. And it really does feel like carving the energy around letting that inception of what you want to see in the world actually have the space to come through and to come through us, because we all have such a distinct gift, and the scenario of our life is the absolute best breeding ground potentially, if we choose it, to nurture that thread. Like our challenges will be our biggest teacher and our biggest like breakthrough. So yeah, I'd say for me anyway, maybe in the spirit of rounding off, spaciousness has been something, maybe physical space too, or different aspects of space, financial space, whatever, has been a big challenge for me. And so it's something I've been interested in a lot, in terms of like knowing that when you can create that space, you potentiate for ideas and new things to come forward.
Yeah, beautiful. That's, for me, I have, like during the day, like you said, turning the phone off and just having periods where there's no, like, for me, it's like creating that awareness of when does this little divider spirit come in that wants to pull me out of presence and fragment. And it could be while you're engrossed in a practice that I've mentioned, like the things that you go deep with. There's that little pull that says, well, what about, why don't you get a head start on making your breakfast? And what are you going to do? There's this divider entity. So just becoming aware, like when does it surface, and then denying it. Like this technique, I make it a game almost, you know? It's like something that fragments me and divides me and wants me to pull me out of presence. There's no reason I gotta leave this activity. So be spacious, let that thing show up, but don't succumb to it. And the more you exercise this, it becomes less and less. Then you're able to go with more concentration and go deeper in activities. So I've had this like game. I make these little games. I try to gamify some of these things. But just the awareness of what is this thing that's trying to pull me out of presence. So the more fragmented and split we become, then there's less space, the feeling of space. So to me, that's been like the fundamental thing, but also to have intentionality about these things are important to me, like time to sit, meditate, time to do my Qigong practice, practice my instruments, things like that. These are non-negotiable during the day. And I find that in those activities, when I'm integrated and I'm going deep with it, it feels super spacious. And the more you get to experience what does that feel like versus that fragmented and like shallow mode of operating and being mechanical about things, the more you invite that in and you honor it, it becomes like the pull towards that in life. And then you carry it out into your activities when you're playing music and we're collaborating. The spaciousness is there for what happens in the moment for you to respond out of that. Creating and not bringing things in. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I think just this idea of noticing the things that want to encroach on space, and then oftentimes we give into it readily, and we're trained then we can't sense like the value of space. So
Yeah, that,
sometimes it's taking activities off the schedule and saying no to some invitations and social things. But certainly the phone and checking things, and then the distraction that wants to pull you out of integration in the moment. That's
yeah, that feels like an invitation to strengthen the mind a bit, like that, strengthen that. This is my sacred space, this is important to be in that flow and not interrupt myself, even. Because then
yeah.
we can complain about other people interrupting us. I do. But maybe I'm already interrupting myself and I'm open to that. It made me think about the two linked themes of taking up space, doing things, or holding space as well, and choosing which one you want to do. Because we can slip into one or the other unconsciously, and actually choosing can be really nice. Oh, I'm actually just going to take up space right now with this. I'm not asking, I'm just going to, way. And other times it's more mindful, like, well, it's mindful either way, but okay, if someone's needing something different. But yeah, there's just so many layers.
But it happens that taking up space, it comes from space in depth, that it surges forward. It's not you're trying to do that, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's the fountain erupts from a deep place. So that's having more of those moments in life and then seeing the magic of that. But you have to make a choice to honor and dwell and visit the depth and the space. That's
Yeah, then it
that.
spontaneously erupts, like you say, and emerges like, yeah, I just want to share this with you.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like this conversation about space we've had has actually brought us a feeling of spaciousness to me right now. Um, Not some vague idea of peace or something, but just all the dimensions of what that is. Because each of us, we are a space. People come into our energy field and they feel it. We all of us are a sacred space, and honoring each other in that way, like, ooh, it's a world. Whose is this one? What world am I entering in now? Just stepping into the room or the virtual space together. So, yeah, it's been so good to talk to you about this, Jonathan, and just be together in this um, virtual space.
Thank you so much, Bryony, for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I love your jumper as well, by the way. Beautiful.
Take care.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you too. Bye.
Bye bye.